stand if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you everyone for taking your summer night and coming tonight to hear these survey results. A little housekeeping. So that we only had to pay Mr. Foster from School Perceptions once. He's going to do a presentation on the staff survey that the staff took in April and May of this year. It's going to last about 10 minutes. I'm going to suggest that the school board limit our questions to his process and data mining, and that we not get into some substantive discussion on the results of the survey at this time. Let's give the administrative team time to examine it, look to see where we shine, look to see where we might need help in ourselves, and then we bring that back to a future meeting. And that will help keep that presentation short so that we can have as much time as possible for the CFAC presentation and discussion. Bill Foster is from School Perceptions. They're a company that does primarily, if not exclusively, surveys for schools, and they survey on just about anything one could want to know about. Lots of school districts in Wisconsin, including Sevastopol, have come to rely on their data mining and results on actions that we might take. So this is the staff survey, the staff climate survey that the staff took in April and May of this year. And Mr. Foster is going to give us an overview.
Well, thank you for having me up tonight, and thanks. I'm kind of happy I don't have to drive up twice. And by the way, if the board does have more questions, we can also schedule just a phone call and cover it that way, so good. The other reason this is kind of important, this is a staff survey. We do this every year. And you might say, well, what does this have to do with a community survey and referendum planning and whatnot? It's actually quite important because the staff, they actually have the most credibility when they go out and talk in the community whether or not this is a good district, if we're doing good work, good things. If we are, that's important. If the staff isn't unhappy, if they're not engaged, that tends to resonate with the rest of the community. So this is kind of relevant, not only for staff engagement, but as well as also for the from a referendum standpoint. So we're going to go through this pretty quick. Again, our company is School Perceptions. We do a lot of surveys throughout the state and the nation. We've done over 10,000 surveys for school improvement. That takes the form of student, staff, and parent surveys. We're also going to talk about the community survey tonight. As it relates to why do you do a staff survey, if you've got an engaged staff, then they engage the students, that improves student outcomes. This survey we do every year. This year we did it in May. We came back, we had a 70% participation rate, or about 76 staff members took it. And we ask questions in terms of where do you spend most of your time. So of course we have representation from really all areas. And then also position. We can look at the classroom teachers and aides and paras and whatnot. And including the current year, how many years have you worked. So sometimes we want to look at the data for the newer teachers compared to the teachers or staff that have been here longer. And you can see that about half have been here more than 6 years, about half have been here 1 to 5 years. We had one question on planning. Can you help me out there, Clint?
I don't know if I can fix the cropping, but I was just going to put this down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, now you're.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't know if that's part of the deal.
Let's see.
This is challenging your technical abilities. You can see that.
Does that make it any better?
No, just put it on the speaker.
And does that make what you see better? Yes.
That was
It's now a 12-minute presentation.
Thanks, Matt. We didn't allow for
contingency.
Well, I can tell you what I think it says. It'll be pretty accurate. So there's a planning section. This has the staff weigh in and say, what should we be focusing on? Better prepare students for life after high school, improving school safety and security, developing innovative programs to improve student learning, provide additional intervention for students that are struggling, as well as additional counseling, so that as the board thinks about planning over the summer, that's the area that the staff would like to focus. Then we go into, really, there's some sections of the survey that deal with things like change readiness, so each page corresponds to a set of questions that the staff was able to respond to. People could either strongly agree. The first column shows what that percentage was. We then calculate an average. The average is based on a simple average. So if everyone would have said strongly agree, we'd be a 5. If everyone would have strongly disagreed, we'd be a 1. We then compared it to last year. So the comparison column is the third column, last year's data, and then you can see the difference. Typically, the board will say, well, what's significant? Anything different than 0.2 is significant. So if you're positive 0.2, that becomes a significant positive. If you're negative 0.2 or less, it becomes a significant negative or area of slippage. So you can see across the board in terms of change readiness, all the items tested with a significant improvement over last year. Student achievement, again, all positive, significantly positive. There is one social and emotional needs of students are being met. That one's actually, I think, dropped down. That's something we want to look into. Engagement, again, all these items are, 4 of the items are significantly better. Top ones I would recommend this district to others seeking employment. That's important, 0.49. And then the bottom one says, my work contributes to the success of our district. There was no change there. But you can see generally, again, the trend in terms of engagement is very positive. Communication has improved in all areas, with the one exception, slight drop with, I have a good understanding of the goals of the district. And then how would you rate communication? This could be great, good, fair, poor. So you could be great would be a 4. And we tested all areas. District administration, custodian, transportation, school board, building principal administration, and food service dropped. And actually the one area, if you're kind of like, well, what's the conclusion, Bill? Technology and technical services was scored quite a bit lower. So that was the one area. And I think we have a new tech person, maybe? Okay. Way to go. Thank you. All right. So culture, in all items, and 3 of the 5 items tested with more significant improvement. Our school operates as a team. School department works hard to find ways to improve, so on and so forth. Again, the conclusion is from a culture standpoint, the district has improved significantly over the last year. Academic expectations. This came out kind of gray, which is interesting. It's colorful. You could be too right or too high, just right or too low. So arguably from a staff standpoint, you want to balance the too low, too high. So you're pretty well balanced. You've got the rigor bar pretty well set. From a work environment standpoint, again, generally the conclusion is, the first one is I feel valued by our community as it's significantly improved. All the items, other areas have improved over last year. In the first slide, there are some areas that you slipped, and again, the theme here is satisfied with technology available to me. That was significantly below, and satisfied with technology support was not acceptable and significantly below the previous year, and I think that has already been addressed. Health and wellness section, district's wellness committee is effective, 0.69, and again, all these are significantly positive improvements over the previous year. And last one is, I don't know what the last one is. I can't read the last one.
I engage in healthy nutritional practices.
Oh, good. All right. Development and recognition, again, significantly improved. The top 2 being 0.39 and 0.27 better. The district's professional learning days are organized and well planned, and I receive credit for and recognition when I do a good job. So those are significantly improved. Compensation and benefits, we don't go too deep into compensation and benefits. We do test both pay as well as benefits, and you can see across the board, probably the pay is the same, which is kind of interesting, or same, I don't know if it is the same as last year, but if people aren't happy, you can't pay them enough money, basically. If people are becoming more engaged, more happy, pay is less of an issue. So they're more satisfied from a pay and compensation standpoint as they were last year. Building leadership has improved. We've got one principal as an effective leader that's actually dropped a little bit. And department leadership, this is a section that we don't have a comparison. This was new for 2018, so we don't have comparisons from last year. District administration. District administration is responsive, and again, significant improvements. All these are well above 0.2. District administration is doing what it takes to make our district successful and consistent with administrating policies concerning employees. The school board, we don't leave the school board out. They get evaluated as well. And again, they have significantly improved over last year. It's doing what it takes to make our district successful. At 92%, 95%, the school board is appropriately balances the mission and district with financial responsibilities and also is presenting a positive image to our community. Job satisfaction, these are the top 4 of importance: good leadership, compensation, salary, meaningful work, and a healthy culture and working conditions. And then overall satisfaction, last section, district has improved over the last year, 0.67 better than it was, 91%, 97% our community supports education, significantly better, and satisfied with financial management, significantly better. In all things considered, the district is a good place to work, has improved up to 4.4, which is a 0.39 improvement over last year. Some of you might say, well, of course it's better, right? But how do we compare to other districts? We're going to get to that in just a second. What grade would you give us? So you could be, this is an A, B, or a C or D. So with 13% were C's, everybody else was an A or B. And how would you rate the district compared to neighboring districts? We could be much better, 31% better, 43% the same, 19%. Only 3% of our staff said worse. So we're improving. And then we went out and we compared you to similar school districts, which is kind of interesting. We do that by what we call indexes. We create 12 indexes around people, what we call people, place, and process. These are indexes that are used across the state with many districts. So you can see what the people ones are and the place ones are and the process ones are. So the people is control of our work environment, health, stress, workload, affirmation. Place is, am I equipped? Do we have a collaborative work environment, culture of educational excellence, trust and building leadership? And process, public parent support, a planning improvement process, trust in district leadership and communications. And drum roll please, this is how we compare to other school districts. And you can see your average, or Sevastopol's average, the comparison, and you can see across the board you not only have improved over last year, but you're pretty significantly better than other districts. So conclusion is good job. I think that's it. That's my 14-minute presentation with a 2-minute delay.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Foster on his data or process at this time? We can accumulate those and have a phone conference with him if we need to. He will then roll into the facility study committee study, right?
We will. As soon as it gets me teed up there.
Can you all see if you want to sit elsewhere?
Can you see that okay? All right, let's see what this one looks like. So this is the survey summary for the community survey that you're all part of creating. This actually went out in June. It looked like this. The deadline was June 25th, not that long ago. It was mailed to every household in the district. People could take it online or in paper. So we had 915 people respond to the survey, which was about half came back via paper. We had a participation rate of 30%, which raises the question, how's that? I think when I was here last time, someone asked, well, what's going to be the response rate? I said typical is 18 to 20%. So you knocked that out of the park at 30%. And I look back, and I think in the last survey we did, we were at 18%. So this is significantly higher response rate. From a statistical standpoint, this is important. You've got a margin of error about plus or minus 3%. And the data is not going to change. If you had another 1,000 people take it, I would bet you $100 it won't move more than 1% one way or another. So the data just doesn't change once you get to a certain level. That level happens to be about 400, so you're at 900 already. So we've got very good data to make a decision. So we asked, what is your age? And what pops out here is we have old people. We actually have old people taking the surveys. So we had 50% of our sample were over 65, which might raise the question, should we be concerned? No. When it comes to voting, seniors tend to turn out a lot higher than our 18 to 25-year-olds turn out. So this is really good, and it's a bit of a bias, but it's a good bias. Okay. In which municipality do you reside? 55% of our sample came from the town of Sevastopol, and then we had a smattering from everybody else. Jacksonport was 15, 13% Egg Harbor, 7% town of Sturgeon Bay, 5% city of Sturgeon Bay, 3% don't live in the school district, and then we have 2% other. I guess I'd ask the board generally, is that representative of community as you know it? Is that kind of what you would expect?
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty good.
I think the town of Sevastopol response rate is really high. I mean, they are a bigger town, but...
Are they about half the
Jacksonport would
total?
have more.
No, they wouldn't, I would think Jacksonport would have more.
Well, I think bigger than 50%.
Right.
I think Harvey only has half.
So that is something we could disaggregate the data on in terms of support by municipality, but I'm not sure we're going to need to, but that's something we could do.
Is there a question about, they live in the school district? It says do not live, only 3%, but where they're able to vote.
What I'm going to suggest is you try to hold your questions for Bill until the end of his procedure, because what I've learned in his presentations is my burning question is answered 1 or 2 slides later.
Okay, good. So hold your questions, but I'll get to them all, hopefully. So the question is your primary residence? So this is very important here because we've got a lot of folks that have second homes. 14% of our samples said they do not have. They don't have their primary residence here, so that kind of explains maybe a little bit of the data where it could be other or they didn't know how to answer. But this 14% tends to be pretty accurate. The other thing is we're going to remove those folks from the funding support question. So if you don't live here on a full-time basis, you can't vote, so therefore we're going to factor that out of the funding support. Part of the sample, we had 85 staff members. We actually had more staff members take this survey than the last survey. Interesting. 85 staff members, 830 of the respondents are not staff. And we had 182 parents take the survey with 733 that do not. This is going to become important because what we want to do is remove any bias because we don't want to overrepresent the staff or the parents. But actually 80% is actually pretty high of our non-parent response rate. If you have school-age children, what schools they attend. So again, you could, obviously, if you're a parent, you've got children that could attend the elementary, middle, or high school. Then we also have a smattering or a small population public school outside of the district. Those would be your open enrollee-in parents, most likely, homeschool, private parochial school, and online and virtual at 1%. Overall, what impact do you believe the quality of the district is having on your home value? And this is kind of important because this is school district an asset, one that we should be invested in, or is it a liability? 42% of our sample said has a positive impact, 46% little to no, with only 6% saying it's a negative impact. And then 6% don't own a home at all. And then we had one question on communication. Here we thought it made sense to take the staff out completely. So we're looking at, actually gray and gray. The dark gray are the parents, the dark gray are the non-parents. So their number one is the district newsletter, the Pioneer Times, at 61%, closely followed by the school mailings, with Peninsula Pulse at 49%. So that's actually really high for a local paper. So half of our non-parents are reading the Peninsula Pulse. For our parents, they're actually sorted. Their number one is email, 74%. School mailings was second. And the Pioneer Times newsletter is at 56% or third. We've got 35% that like Facebook and 28% text messaging. And actually, the Door County Advocate is at 39%. So really, there's two local papers that have fairly high readership in this area. And school board meetings were at 14%. You guys. All right, so then we get to the funding support question. And there's actually two referendums that were tested in the survey, the first being what is called an operational referendum. There was some background information to provide context to show where we currently fit compared to our neighbors. And then we asked the question, would you support renewing the operational referendum, again to fund daily operations, for $2 million for each of the next 2 years? This would have a tax impact of $33 over the current level. So what you're currently paying, this would be an additional $33 per $100,000 of assessed property value. So you can see all primary residents, these are folks who live in the district, have a home in the district, and the combining definitely yes and probably yes, we're at 69%. But to remove any bias, we're going to look at the groups separately. So staff was at 92% with 4% saying no. Parents were at 82% supporting it, with 12% saying no. This is the most important group though. And they're the most important because they represent the majority of our voters. The majority of our voters don't work in the district and don't have kids in the district. So where they're the non-parent, non-staff primary residents, we're at 64% support for the proposed operational referendum, with only 24% saying no. So if this referendum, with all three groups, now you can see a majority of all three groups are supporting the proposed operation. If this were put on a ballot today, I would predict it would have very strong support. And by the way, don't take that one for granted. I do a lot of board presentations, and there's not support for proposed operational referendum. So that means you've got really strong support from this community for the school district. So then we get into what's called the capital referendum. This is a little bit different. This would allow the district to issue a bond to pay for facility projects. So again, when we put this report together, we provided the background information that was in the survey. So when you look at this thing down the road, you'll say, well, what did that survey even look like? I can't remember. Well, this is the background information to provide the context for it. And then we also have the needs. You probably remember helping us draft that. And then we ask the question. I'm going to have to interpret this a little bit because we're missing out on our bottom of our screen.
So
But
let me just see if I can switch from black and white to color.
Okay.
That color saturation negative front, I think.
Is it? Hey, getting there. Oh boy.
it's harsh.
All right. Well, it's something of a color.
It is.
At least
I can work with it.
Yeah.
You can tell they're purple people now. Is that?
That's good
Is
enough.
that a trope?
We'll make that work. So I'll explain what this is. So the question is, would you support the district exploring a building referendum or capital referendum to update or replace the school? So again, these are only primary residents. The first bar in blue is all residents. So we've learned that that can be maybe bias, so we want to remove any bias, so we create these 3 separate subgroups. The next bar, which is
Staff.
well, I know what it is. I'm trying to decide what color it is.
Eggplant.
Eggplant, dark magenta. 92% of our staff is saying, yep, we're on board supporting the expiration of a capital or building referendum. 87% of our parents are pink. And then the other blue, that's our non-parent, non-staff group. So 52% are saying yes. So this is also pretty important. So without counting the undecided, a majority of all subgroups are saying, yeah, we're okay with you exploring a referendum. That's not to say we were going to support exactly what you're proposing, but they're all saying, yeah, we're in to explore this, we're in to potentially support a capital or building referendum. So we tested 2 options. The first is build a new school. Again, we provided the background information that was in the survey in terms of where it would be built, what would be the various components. And the price tag came out at $57 million. We then asked the question, would you support it? You can see all primary residents were at 40% to 48%, 40% yes, 48% no. Breaking it out into the subgroups, staff was at 78%. Parents are at 63%. But our non-parent, non-staff, the people who get the most votes, they're 31% yes with 56% saying no to our new school. So I did some additional analysis for you because we have to do a little math. And I'm assuming, and this might not be perfect, but it's probably close, that 75% of our community doesn't have kids in the school. I'm assuming 25% of our community does have their parents, they have kids in our school. And for the sake of this analysis, I took the staff out completely because they just don't have enough votes. They probably represent less than 1% of our community. So of those folks who responded either definitely yes or probably yes, we're at 39%. My experience is when these go to referendum, you can typically have about a third of the undecided will lean yes, 2/3 will lean no. And my theory on that is that in Wisconsin, people are nice. They don't want to say no, so they say I'm undecided. But when it comes to voting, they'll tend to go more no than yes. So if we could pick up a third of the undecided, we'd be up to 42.7%, which would not be enough support to pass a $57 million referendum. We also tested a second option, which is option 2, to renovate the existing school. Same format. Here is the background information that was provided. Same or similar question. This was $45 million. For all residents, we were at 37%, with 50% saying no. 68% of the staff said we're on board with that. 61% of our parents said we'll invest in this older building, that's okay too. And then our non-parent, non-staff resident, they're at 29%, with 57% saying no. Same analysis. This is actually pretty similar within a couple percent, but for those who are definitely yes or probably yes, we're at 37. And if we could carry a third, we'd be up to 41.7%. So maybe 1.5% lower, but very similar support. And actually the first option, the building new, was actually more expensive. So you can kind of factor that in. Usually some of these times these things will go in terms of the more expensive, less support, but actually there's a little more support for building new in terms of this analysis. But we also did one other question where we asked, which option would you support should it appear on a future referendum? And again, the first bar being all residents. Second bar in the magenta is staff. Third is parents, and the fourth is the, am I saying that right?
The fourth is non-parent, non-staff.
Fourth is non-parent, non-staff. So the 41% is non-parent, non-staff. So here's the takeaway. Non-parent, so 41% of our non-parent, non-staff, the folks that get the most votes, are saying I wouldn't support either one of those. 15% of our staff is saying that, of our parents, and 6% of our staff. You've got other folks, going to the next one, I would support either option. So 59% of our staff, 49% of our parents, or 24% of our non-parent, non-staff. We've got some folks who are undecided. And you can see the fourth one over, I would support option 1, build a new school. That has a little more support, 12% overall compared to 10%. Much more supported by staff, more supported by parents, but it's really a coin flip with the non-parent, non-staff. They kind of don't care. They're at 11% supporting option 1, 11% supporting option 2. So I guess the conclusion is, first of all, let's back the bus up. Let's celebrate the fact that there's strong support for the operation. There's also support for exploring a capital project. If either option 1 or option 2 were put on the ballot today, I'm very confident that neither would pass. But there is support to do something. And there's probably a slight leaning towards building new than remodeling. However, you can't do it all at once. So you're going to have to probably explore some sort of phased approach to doing either, because the tax tolerance in this community doesn't go up to $47.50 or over $50 million at this point. So there's a lot to celebrate. So I don't want you to say, oh, it's really pretty positive, but it's also a lot of money to consider. And I think that's the end of the data.
So do board members or CFAC members have questions for Bill Foster? Those questions would be directed really toward his process and his data mining, because we do have Ray Architects and Myron Construction here tonight who will be presenting on construction, some other options, etc., that you can talk to them about. But do you have questions for Mr. Foster specifically regarding his survey? Anyone?
It was such a good presentation. I answered all the questions.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll be wanting to talk to you more about the staff survey.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So then we have Ray Architects. Matt Wolford is here with Clint and Craig from Myron Construction, and they are going to present on some items now.
Do we need a microphone because we're being recorded? Is that why we're doing that? I'm not a real fan. All right.
Yeah, you're loud enough.
You have to speak loudly.
All right, so if you can't hear me, let me know. I'm going to try to speak up. I need the microphone. So, thanks, Bill.
Nice job.
Back. So the next step is really to talk about the next step. So I think the first question on the board heard strong support for the operating question. So unless we want to have dialogue about that, my sense would be good news. As Bill said, let's celebrate that, and I'm guessing the board will take action on that in the near future to proceed with that. Our role as a committee is to talk about formulating a potential recommendation to the board on what to do with the facility. So we're returning to where we were previously. To be upfront, we only saw this data Wednesday or Thursday of last week. That was right after the 4th, basically. So what we did very quickly is tried to pull together some scenarios for you to consider as a potential path forward. We'll pass these around. The one thing I will just be very upfront on is these came together quickly. So there's keywords, the costs are approximates, there's still work to do here. But we wanted to give you as a group something to start working from. This is two-sided. There's 4 options conceptually here, but don't think of these as being provided in any sort of preferential order. This just happens to be the order that I wrote them down the first time. So there's no preference from us, I believe, for any of these options. This could all be the same, just a single sheet. So as you heard from Bill, we really are looking at a potential phased solution. There may be a slight leaning towards new construction, but I think you could arguably make that a coin flip. If you have a group feel there's a strong reason to consider a solution to expand this facility. So I'm going to briefly run through these. And again, we're going to be critical of all of these, not because we're advocating for or against one, just to help you think critically about what advantages or disadvantages some of these options may have. So first option, potential option number one would be to build a new 612 building. That'd be the first phase of our project. What could that look like? A new middle high school building on district-owned property. The square footages have some work to do. So this is where we were when we just stripped our K-12 programs for our $57 million solution that we tested in the survey. That was all new K-12. We quickly, without any staff input or admin input, tried to scale that back to what we thought a new 612 building would need. I'm hoping if we get back together them with the staff and admin, and this is the preferred direction, maybe we can pinch that down a little bit further. Don't know that for sure yet. So this is a conservative square footage. Hopefully it would only go down, which would directly affect the cost. Any new option has to consider all the new site development, right? So we need parking, we need drive, we need connectivity with the road, we need a well, we need sanitary and all the other stuff. So these may have a slightly higher cost per square foot because we've got to bear all the costs of that site development with this. We are considering all of these a first phase. There would be a future phase to expand, in this case, to add an elementary school. So again, it would be a phased implementation of what we surveyed the community as a $57 million solution. Some of these are just validation to make sure we're transparent and clear, no athletic fields included. You'll see that consistent across. We didn't have those in before, but just to make sure that we're continuing to be clear in that communication. The existing tech ed could be demolished in this case because we're moving middle and high school students out, so this little L-shaped piece could go. As part of that, this would have an approximate capacity of 450 students. And in this case, we're suggesting no renovation of the existing school. Because if our goal remains to have a future phase, to have a new K-12 campus, 612 and this option being first, adding an elementary school in the future, putting any significant investment in any component of this building that's remaining would likely be a wasted investment if the goal is to walk away from this facility in the future. That being said, the board will have to consider ongoing maintenance and traditional upkeep that would come with keeping that. That's just the reality of operating two buildings. So the approximate cost for option one is $37.5 million.
Let me ask you a question. In option one, you're talking the capacity for the middle school and the high school of 450, and the elementary school for 430. We only have 600 kids now. Is that correct?
We had some additional capacity that we were.
That much?
We assume
With
66.
declining enrollments in a rural school district?
We didn't change, these are always the assumptions through the programming process with admin and leadership on the same number of classrooms. So this is the same as you would have seen in the survey. That's what I'm saying. Now that we know we may pare this back. The reality is we may have to pare this back for a variety of reasons. But this is about 60 students per grade level. Was what the previous options had planned for, and we remained consistent with that here. Option two, you can see a lot of the same assumptions, but this would just be a new high school. So 912 students only, new campus on the new site, prepared and planned for future additions, whether it's one phase or two. That would be a future committee's job to figure out, whether that was a middle school and then an elementary, or whatever version the community would go for in the future. Again, in that case, existing tech ed could be demolished. Now, we would have to talk about if we need to do anything for middle schoolers if they travel across. It's not that far. Maybe they could just travel. We have to work some of those details out between now and the time we would take a recommendation to the board. But in that case, you can see it's about a $32 million project. Option three is a new elementary school. This would build a new pre-K through 5th grade building on the same site. A little different here is that we would have new playground needed. Elementary kids need that playground space. So that would have to go along. Another difference here is that none of the existing could be demolished because we still have our middle and our high school students here. They're going to need access to the tech ed and all the other components that we can't get rid of given that they've been moving across in other options. Approximate cost here, $24.5. You can see here, this is a great way to look. There's a direct correlation and a significant correlation between square footage and cost. The other thing to keep in mind if you're doing the math on the new middle high school, option one, and the option three being new elementary school, how come they add up to slightly more than the $57 million? It's because both of these options assume the site development's included. Because if we build a new elementary or we build a new 612, we have to do that site work. So if it's slightly higher than the 57, it's not a math mistake or an estimating issue. It's because the site is duplicated in both of those.
There, on that option, it says no renovation of existing school included. Does that mean that there are no updates included for the tech ed and science areas?
Correct. Again, thought being, and this could be an incorrect thought, it was just one assumption we made, is that if the goal remains to eventually have a new K-12 campus on the district-owned property, we're just going to do it in phases instead of the plan to do it all at once. Any investment here now, if our goal is to make a future investment over there, will be dollars that we will, I won't say are wasteful, because you'll benefit from that investment for whatever period of time you stay here. But if the goal would be to come back sooner than 20, 25 years from now, those would be dollars that we probably aren't going to maximize in terms of the investment. So those are 3 new construction options, and there's probably some hybrids you're all thinking of already. So we just wanted to get the thought process started of what could a first phase of a new building, if that's what you as a committee feel should be recommended, what could those look like? The other option, option 4, would be the first phase of an addition renovation concept. So some will say, why did you come up with this? The survey said, Bill said it was leaning a little bit towards. So the thought here is that, and again, like I said before, we're going to advocate for all of these because we want you to think critically about them. We have no skin in the game. Whichever one of these you feel is in the best interest of the community, we're fully supportive of. The thought here is that any of those other options, we're only affecting the grade groups that are directly going to be included. So an option 1, 6-12, an option 2, 9-12, an option 3, pre-K through 5. Those are the direct grade levels that would be impacted. If we did the first phase of an addition and a renovation concept, that could conceptually affect all grades. Because maybe there's, and we've got a concept, why don't we just put that up there and I'll talk through it quickly. It should look pretty similar. The key here is don't think of these classrooms as any, they could be elementary, they could be middle school, they could be high school. Right now, they're just classrooms. They're the right proportion, the right size. We as a group would have to decide what we think that first phase could be. So this should look pretty familiar. It's kind of the starting point of an option. This all should look pretty similar. Zoom pretty far out. Can you just get that tighter there, please? We all know the existing building. Thank you. So this should look pretty familiar. Remember, as a committee, we had a concept where we did all the site development, made the connection to Rip Road, new parking, drop-off pickup, secure entrances. So there's a secure entrance and office here, secure entrance and office here, shared cafeteria, multi-purpose room, shared kitchen. This case, because we were trying to minimize the cost of the first investment, we showed a single court gymnasium for now with a detailed plan to expand that gymnasium in the future. We're then showing literally 2 stories of classrooms here, additional classrooms here. Again, that's going to be any grade configuration. It might be 6-12, it might be K-5. We don't have a preconceived notion. We have to work with you on that. We have a library for whatever grade groupings end up down here. And then the big piece is we get the first phase of tech ed and a greenhouse. So existing tech ed in this scenario could be demolished, greenhouse could be demolished, and that being one of the more pressing areas of need from our tours, and you know where that's a pretty high priority, was to make that investment in STEM and tech ed. We could achieve that with this addition, again, regardless of what age group you end up putting in there. So the thought here is that this could be, not sure you're interested, this could be a scenario where we begin an addition renovation concept, and a future phase would be, why don't we jump to that? We did kind of master plan out what a future phase would look like. Keep in mind, future phase is not included in here, so what you just saw would be about $32.6 million. The future phase then, this would all be existing now, so the areas in gray, including this piece, 91 gym, all of that. We would add additional tech ed and ag space, band, choir, and then a 2-story classroom addition. And again, that 2-story classroom addition could be making up for whatever we don't build in the first phase. Also then in this phase would be any renovations that aren't completed in the first phase. would be completed on the existing building. So the thought here is that if our goal, if for some reason we prefer to stay versus starting new, and we want our investment to potentially touch a broader age group, we could potentially make it the first phase that affects all students, K-12, in some way, shape, or form. This may be an option you as a committee want to consider. Again, being totally upfront, we're not advocating for any of these. This is definitely not a final plan. This came to light, including the 4th of July in a couple of days. So there's work to do on this plan. But we wanted to just get the conversation started this evening. So I think the first question, and if you guys want to take some time at the tables, the first question I would ask is, the next step, do you agree that the next step would be considering a capital question for a first phase of some type at the November election? That's a question I think if we don't believe that's a good idea, then I don't know that we need to do a great deal of debating over which of these paths forward we may want, but why don't we just take a few minutes at our small groups at each table and talk a little bit about... Yes.
For that question to be on the November referendum, you would have to come up, you would have to decide which option goes by about the middle of August, because the August 20th is the last date that the board could declare the resolution for referendum. So
Does that mean you're going to do another survey?
no, we're not going to do another survey. So it's about a month to make a decision on any of these, if this is the way to go.
We have absolutely no idea of, is it 10 million, is it 15, is it, I mean, we took that out of the survey, so what were we even, what were you mentioning?
We don't have that. Unfortunately, we don't have the tax tolerance from the community now. That was a question that was removed from the survey. A frame of reference would be that a mill rate increase under $2, so really that includes the 33 cents, right?
Yep.
So if we have a $33 mill rate impact for question 1 for operating, an additional $1.65 roughly would get us to just under $2, would be somewhere around 30 to 35 million. Bear doesn't run all the specifics on that, but it's somewhere in that range. We have no data to support that. Absolutely none. But it's significantly less than the 2 questions that we asked. We did see there was support. Remember, Bill said that 52% of our non-parent, non-staff group said they were interested in exploring something. We just reached a little further financially than they were willing to support. So now as a group, if we want to go ahead, we have to do play a little bit of a guessing game and decide how much. One threshold could be that combined mill rate under $2 would get you around 30 to 35 million.
Let me ask you one other question. If you look on the internet today, you can find out the price of a car or a truck, and you know that you're not going to pay too much for it. You can also do the same thing with the school system. If you look on the internet under schools planning and management, it'll tell you how many square foot per student it takes for the average school in 2017. It'll also give you a square foot price, what it costs to build that school. And they're telling you on this article that I read that it's somewhere around 190 square foot per student, but we're talking 342 square foot per student. So we're way, way bigger. The school is way bigger than for the 600 kids.
So if I'm familiar with that article. I think the last time they collected that data was 2015.
No, 17.
So they released that 17 now?
17. And the other thing...
Which average? Did you use the regional average or did you use the national average?
It was, I don't remember, it was a national average.
See, the national average is deceiving because everybody in the South, they don't build hallways, they don't have lockers, so it's one metric to use, but you can't use schools.
It's the average. What's the average over the years?
Fair.
But the other thing I wanted to say is there's all kinds of grant money in this article also that's available that should be applied for. If you've got kids that are, 35% of the kids are eligible for free lunch, there's a Zone Academy, a QZAB that you should be able to get money for.
Yep, Baird would have considered whether you A, qualified, and B, those dollars were available.
Because Kewanee and the school districts down on the lake right now just got a bunch of money from the federal government.
Okay, all right,
And we
so,
will certainly look into all of those. Really, the goal, the question for you tonight is, do any of these options look like something that should be presented to the community in November? You can decide to meet again in 2 weeks or 1 week and talk about it some more. You can make a decision tonight. You can decide that no, we should do more research and go to referendum in April. You can decide that we should do another survey. So
I think you're gonna be a lot luckier if you did what they did down south of here in Kewanee with their edition.
all right, so let's go small groups. First question is, A, do we want to proceed in November? Let's keep in mind, time is money when it comes to construction. Inflation obviously adds every time you wait. If you do go in November, it's the presidential, way ahead of myself, gubernatorial election. So there's some benefit, and if you want the broadest amount of feedback from your community at referendum, November would be the time. April's absolutely a viable option as well. So let's go small groups, talk about if we want to consider a first phase in November. We'll report out in about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about which option you're leaning toward as a group in our second round of small discussion.
That to bring an option like this before the voters with so little time to prepare is not a good option.
Okay?
Something else that we brought up was, and Kyle was at this meeting, the Lynn Drive Association, I've been questioned on that many times since then. They want one question answered first of all, and that's consolidation. How many times was that brought up?
Quite a few during the presentation, that consolidation.
And these are those people that are 65 and older.
So he talked about consolidation with Sturgeon Bay, or?
No, not specifically. So, and remember, we did address the best we could in the
we
Q&A.
have one conversation,
So,
one conversation going at a time so everybody can hear.
Yeah.
okay, so general thoughts are November's too soon. We need more time to develop a potential solution. Okay? Great. How about this table?
Same,
Same?
yep.
Okay.
It's too soon, we don't have enough information. And isn't it true that if a referendum does pass, you have to wait 2 years?
No,
Before
that
you
is
vote
not,
together?
that is not true. The law was never adopted. It was talked about, but it was not. You can only ask 2 questions in 1 calendar year. So, which doesn't affect us in any scenario here. So, yeah, it was talked about, that was never passed into law. How about this table?
I believe our sentiment was is that November would be pushing it and probably not a good time to do it.
Okay.
And I guess, pretty much echoing the first 2 tables.
Okay. Table in the middle? Or you joined up over here? Okay, all right. How about up front?
Say too soon to push it.
Okay.
The one question that I had to do with if a referendum fails, is a law that the state passed about additional tax dollars this year, can a district lose out on some of that? Didn't that happen to Southern Door? Is that familiar, or am I thinking of something totally different?
I think that was discussed similar to the not coming back for 2 years. I think that was discussed but never passed. That's my recollection.
It was a bill that never went to the
Southern Doors was the low revenue ceiling. That's not our issue. That's Southern Doors.
So yeah, they talked about trying to penalize districts, but that never
That never did happen.
never took hold. So.
As far as I know, the only change in referendum language was you can only do 2 questions in 1 year.
Right.
That's it. And you cannot do elections at a special time. So if we don't do this fall, the next opportunity would technically be a primary in February of 19. Most wouldn't do it then. Most would wait until April of 19, which is the regular election. And there are no elections in the fall of 19. So our options are November of this year, April of 19, or then April of 2020. Those would be the next 3 referendums.
When you say 2 questions though, can we do an operational one this November and a construction one then in April?
Absolutely. You could do 2 in November and 2 in 2019 if you wanted to. We don't need to,
Just want
but you
clarification.
could technically do that.
Because we operate from July 1 to June 30th, but the calendar is a calendar year for the referendum questions.
I just wanted to separate the two. So.
Yep, great question.
One other thing, I think that, you talked about November being there's a lot of stuff going on, but it seems to me, as we saw it with the responses, 938 responses, the community will respond. This is a big enough issue, I think, that in April, if it goes to April, we'll get the turnout. People will, I believe.
All of our operating cost referendums have been April elections, and the most voter turnout was 2001, and there's been 4 of those. They've passed 72 to 77%. So yeah, 2001 I think is a pretty good turnout for a vote.
The only reason I brought that up is I would want to make sure that we are very clear in communicating if we wait until April. We're not waiting to April because we think we have a better chance in April. We don't want to make it look like we're going to sneak something through where there's less voters. And I know that's not what we were saying, but some communities would rather go at a major just so they can say, we didn't try sneaking it through. It was that gubernatorial. But good sentiments, thank you. Ms. Table?
Too soon.
Okay. All right, so it feels like we have consensus.
Oh,
Isn't that the media table?
No. We're invisible.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I just think it needs to be smaller, what we're doing. It needs to be less money. I think you got to get the 2 million that you need for operating. That has to happen. And I think you have to go back and relook at what they did in South here, if you want.
Okay. Committee members, right? And I just don't know how board and committee are interacting tonight, so I look to.
Yeah, can I say something as a CFAC guy?
Yeah.
So a couple questions I would say is, I would ask this group, the CFAC group, how much more detail will you, I realize, you're just digesting this information, and it's July 10th, so maybe summer or whatever, but it's not August 20th. How much more detail, based on all the meetings we've had, how much more detail do you need on needs? So chew on that for a little bit. I think the community momentum that everyone's been involved in, that you group chose, is very important and should not be just thrown away. So I would ask to think about that. I think a couple things that needed to be clarified very clearly, and it was asked. A failed referendum, folks, is not the end of the world. It's very common in the school district world. And by the way, they used to go to referendum many times without surveys, because we can survey every day of the year and we will still not get black and white data on the decision we're making. I don't care what business you're in, right? That's what it is. You take data and survey, else, because we all would know who should have been the president if the data never lies, right? So I think it's important. So that's what I'm thinking, and we're not tied with the state of Wisconsin, as of today, by law, is not limited to the referendums based on what we're trying to do. So I would just ask with the group and the knowledge, and the one thing I would come back to, there is a need. I don't think, we can have the discussion, but we've had it over and over and over. There is a need for this. Okay, the only other thing I would offer for you to think about is if we just, what's the next meeting, what would be the next agenda. We have all validated two things. There's a need for this as some type of an investment, and I think it would be worth a shot to pick a number, right? Do some educated guessing on a number and design a cost. Basically say, this is the number, you guys meet that number, and what kind of improvement could we make to the schools, because there's that need. So I just think you need to think about some of those challenges. And a couple of tables, what I heard is I'm afraid of what the dialogue was, because if someone said in the meeting right now, we're going to be screwed because of the state of law, and we can't do referendums, and they're going to take money away from us, well, that's not a true statement. And therefore, it may have stopped the dialogue. So those are some things that I think should be discussed and talked about at some point in the future, or today, or whatever.
So maybe a question, Matt, is for the group, because they said too soon. Dave's question is, what additional data do you want to make a decision?
That's exactly where I was going to go next, is even if it's too soon, and no disagreeing there, what if we met in 2 weeks to continue the conversation? What can we provide to help take the conversation to the next level? Do you as a group have a preference for a first phase being new construction versus addition renovation? That would help. Do you have a preference for what a first phase is from a grade configuration perspective? Do you have a preference for an elementary versus a middle high school versus just a high school? without that, my fear would be is we'll be back in 2 weeks and we won't have anything additional to provide you to help kind of continue the conversation.
When we discussed our needs, it was basically safety and education. When I look at these 4 options, I know options 1 and 2 say new middle school, high school, new high school. I think 1 and 2 also provide the opportunity for the elementary to have a safer environment, because if we would move to a new middle school or new high school, the 3rd floor, you could take those 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders and put them in high school math rooms, high school social studies rooms, high school English rooms, and we'd use this facility different. So I know option 4 had renovations that would assist all K-12, and we don't know the details of that, and that's fine at this point. But I don't want to look at the options 1 or 2 and say, well, those don't help our younger grades, because they would help our younger grades as well. Option 3 on here, the new elementary school, doesn't help our high schoolers, and they're the ones that need the educational pieces. So I guess I'm saying of the 4 choices, option 3 is my least one, but we still got to focus on the 2 concerns, safety and education. And I know some people in the room are disappointed that we didn't have a tolerance tax level question on there. If we would have, and we would have found out X million would have been our dollar amount, we'd have other people in this room that'd be disappointed that said, well, you could have got the 45 or the 57, because we found out tonight that it wasn't the 45 or 57, that $12 million was pretty close to each other. So where's the mark? I don't know, but that's what this survey eliminated for us, was gave us a ceiling of 45. Where it exactly is, we don't know. We know it's less than that, but it wasn't 45, 57, and we had better support for 45 million and 57 million than 2015 had for, was it 26.9 million? So that's not the dollars, it's the overall. This maybe was too big a chunk, okay, we understand that, but I think this is 4 great places to start. Even if we wait till April, I don't know if I'd do another survey. Because then you're going to sit there and keep, well, it should be 32, 31, 30, I mean, how tight can we get it? I think we got a good ball ceiling at 45. We got to come up with an option that's going to help our kids in those 2 areas, and then we move forward. And
that's a great
the longer
point.
we wait, the longer the construction process, especially if we would fail in April of 19. Now we're waiting until April of 20, and you're going to keep, and who knows what steel's going to do these days, right?
If we had asked that question, that's a great point, Kyle. If we had asked the question on tax tolerance, we'd be here tonight having the exact same conversation about what to do first, other than we would have a better sense of what the first investment could be. That'd be the only difference. We'd still be having this exact same conversation about what the first phase should be from the committee's perspective.
What's really disappointing is all the effort that's put into this thing to have a 30% response. And in Egg Harbor, I went up and down the road to try to get people to respond.
30% is
30%, great. That's look like that anywhere in the state.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's huge.
13% is
30%. The average is 18%
We only got
response
18
rate.
last time.
You got a 30% response rate. That's a
we do
phenomenal
districts
response
all
rate.
over the state, and I don't know if many I've worked with that at 30%.
We've
So
done
that's
40 with
That's
Bill.
a huge response.
Yeah, it's a huge response.
At 30 is huge.
If you hired a phone polling firm to do this, they would have called 400 people and then told you exactly this data. So you got 984 responses, which is awesome. I would argue, don't question the data.
Egg Harbor was only 13% of the respondents, but Sevastopol is a lot bigger than half of Egg Harbor. So that was still a good response for Egg Harbor.
All right, Dave, another thought as a committee member?
Well, yeah, one more thing to think about, because I think we failed this consolidation question, so hear me out on this. I thought, somewhere in my head, I've gathered this by talking to lots of people, and I thought it came up. So the consolidation was looked at length by me and various other people, and maybe not fully by the board, and I thought it was. So if we consolidated right now, what I can tell you for sure, if we go to Gibraltar, they probably wouldn't join with us. If we go to Sturgeon Bay right now, nothing changes, our tax goes higher. We've already established that, all right? And then let's keep going on this. Let's do the homework, which I've been doing. They don't have the classrooms, folks, so we consolidate with Sturgeon Bay because all of these people think it's a good idea. You know what? They don't have classroom sizes. I went to Sturgeon Bay. I know what the schools are like. So now, we're part of Sturgeon Bay School District. Our taxes went up, and guess what? We have a facility problem.
He's not...
No.
They're not... No one's disagreeing with you.
Let's answer it to the tax community. What I'm saying is educate this group, tell me where I'm wrong, and let's put that question to bed, is what I'm saying.
What I heard when I talked to
I hear it all the time, this is what I tell them.
One conversation at a time. Dave,
Can I have the floor, Dana?
Well, there's a lot more data.
Okay, all right. When I went to the various groups, the older, 65 and older crowd, that's 50% of our voters, said just consolidate. They don't see the community here. They're not part of that community. They're part of their own communities here. And they don't understand, they thought 2008, when the last time a consolidation study was done, that was too old a data. That's 10 years old. And when that was done, Sturgeon Bay agreed with Sevastopol to do that study. Gibraltar was asked to join us in that, and Gibraltar said no at that time. But now here's 10 years later, and they think we should do another survey, but we'd have to have all the districts agree to it. And I don't know if we can get the other 2 districts to agree to that at this point. And the other part is we've had consolidation studies since 1972. So it's been periodically we've had them, we always get the same result. So I don't know how to put that to bed, but consolidation is, and we don't want to break up our community. We've got, you saw the survey from the staff and you see our report card. I don't know, it's why break up our community? I don't get it.
Well, it would be a cost thing. My point was it's
Maybe.
a cost thing. Well, if that's what the voters are saying, that's what we're saying.
That's the
Right.
high school. What if the high school kids went to Sturgeon Bay, just the high school kids?
But what about it? Where would they go?
Hey, right
raise your
now,
hand when you want to speak, please.
if you want to throw the Hail Mary and go for November, okay, you guys have heard me talk the whole time. The 45 and 57 are too close. That's part of the problem. In my mind, it's always supposed to be in that 25 to 30 million dollars. What's the square footage of this building, the 20th edition? What's the square footage of the tech ed? What's it cost to demo those 2 areas? Everyone knows those are the 2 worst areas in the school. And build that similar square footage with new technology. And it's going to be under 30 million. That addresses safety, and it addresses education, and it addresses tech ed.
I would agree that the discussion.
If we wanted to have one more meeting, if Ray and Myron, whoever, is it Myron?
Myron,
Yeah. Ray and Myron could put something together and you had a meeting, you could still make those decisions based on the last 10 meetings worth of information. You could see a number that's valuable, you go to referendum and you say, hey, we heard what you guys said, we can't educate the people on that in short time, but we could say, you know what? We know that the 20th edition, we know that the 40th edition is in rough shape. We're going to just do a knockdown, build identical square footage. We know we've got declining enrollment with new technology and move on. You might have a chance at throwing that out there.
So that's an option 4, but a very scaled back version of an option 4 that has more direct correlation to 2 buildings.
That can use is what we've learned today.
All right, so let's do this. Let's go back into
there's just one other thing I want to bring up, and it sort of goes back to what those guys were talking about, Matt, and over 2 seconds. One is, and again, we are more than happy to do whatever direction you want, November versus April, but 2 things to think about. If you wait till April, you can add 4 or 5% inflation to the numbers, okay, because what's going to happen is, if you wait to go till April, you still again have to allow break time to design. So by the time they get through the design process, we're probably looking at, the project isn't going to start till 2020. Okay, so you have to add inflation for that. Then you also have to look out to project. The second thing I just want you to keep in mind is occupancy of those spaces. So if you go in November, Clint and I were just doing some rough calculations, you probably could look at occupying spaces for the start of the 2020 school year. If you push it out till next year, you're probably pushing that out a year then. Now you're probably looking at occupancy not till 2021. Again, I'm just stating facts so that you guys understand, the decisions that you make and what those implications are. So just keep those 2 factors in mind as well as you continue to sort of kick this around.
Let's go small groups. I'm sorry, Rock. One more. Then
I just wanted to ask a clarification from Brad. Were you talking, Brad, about new construction high school only? Or would it be?
I would take whatever is in this school right now.
Right.
We know that they've got the young kids up top.
Yep.
It's kind of screwed up.
But if you're doing that, are you talking building on this site, building new construction high school, new construction elementary? or what for the same school?
I wouldn't change where the high school is and just leave it where it is.
You're saying add on to this building to replace this
It
square
would be,
footage.
it would be replace the building we're in
Yep.
with whatever classrooms are in,
Yeah.
hopefully in this area for a good percentage of
Sure.
it. Now it's 2 stories versus 3 stories.
Figure that out, yeah.
And then the tech ed, which is in rough shape, that I'm guessing is gonna be somewhere else, but it'd be nice to be in the same area. Just more efficient use of space, same classrooms, not move anything else, no new gym, and you're gonna get below that $30 million number.
So let's do small groups. We're going to spend 10 minutes on this. Think about, don't worry about when we go. We'll revisit that at a later date. Let's talk now about what would a reasonable first phase from a total dollar amount perspective be. So you heard Brad say 25 to 30, right? Kind of an arbitrary number if that feels right to you. What would a dollar amount, even if it's a range, feel like to you as a table for total investment is appropriate to consider? And then if you have a strong preference over what that first phase is, either grades served, is it a new building, or is an addition to this building acceptable? That'll at least give us some sense of what to come back with for another meeting of this group. Sound good? All right, thank you. We'll start at the back.
I think I said it all already. I did a thing on this additions some months ago. I typed it up. I don't know if you ever got a copy of it.
I believe we did.
Okay, so you know what my thoughts are.
Okay.
My thoughts were addition, 2-story addition on the back end of the gym back there, make it stem cell and then try to get some grant money into the federal government.
Okay. Good.
Okay,
Stay
correct me if I'm wrong, but we like Brad's idea a lot to demo the older portions, the 2 oldest sections. No gym, prioritize the needs, and then based on square footage with the 2-story, remodel or addition, find out the cost or estimate, and we would be willing to meet the needs.
Okay.
We did.
Oh, go ahead.
One more thing, I want a firm number on option 1, a lot better poster option.
Okay.
On option 1, because if you're gonna do any of these options on here, like option 4, if you told me you were gonna put a Band-Aid for 32 million, I would never go.
But to be fair,
I'm just saying that.
Option 4 looks expensive. It has 112,000 square feet of new construction.
Yeah.
So
I'd still vote for all these option 1, so I would like to see what an actual number, you said you put through a number together?
So you want to know,
I would like to see a better number.
work with Kyle, what's the smallest square footage we could build? Because that's the way we save money on that. What's the smallest square footage we can build and still reasonably educate our 6-12 students as a first phase?
Because I don't want to see the junior high going back and forth to the winter and the other classes.
Great.
My recommendation would be the staff would go back and forth, not the students.
I would still like to do 6-12 and not 9-12.
I understand that.
Let's see what that looks like. We can work on that. So 2 scenarios. Something Brad-esque.
We like Brad's idea of demo,
Good.
no gym, prioritize the needs, be that cafeteria, tech ed, or whatever, 4 or 5 priority projects that would fit in this square footage with a 2nd story, come up with a cost based on that square footage, and we'd be willing to meet again in 2 weeks.
Okay, excellent. How about this table?
Essentially the same. We were kind of debating the numbers a little bit.
Can you just talk a little bit on this?
We were kind of debating the numbers on what we were comfortable with. And that, Brad had said 25 to 30, if I remember correctly. We're probably in that same range.
Okay.
What was that, $1.65 plus the 33, put us just under 2? What was that number for?
Between 30 and 35. And I'll be Mr. Obvious here. The lower you go, the higher likelihood of success. Probably obvious, but if you're on the fence and you're leaning a little lower, it's just going to increase your likelihood of success.
Well, we still, we spent however many months determining our needs. It's not, yes, they said no to the big ones, right? So it's still figuring out, we still have the same needs. And it's not necessarily time to just throw all that away. It's figuring out how to be smarter about it, I guess, at this point.
Okay. Great, good feedback.
Yeah. When given per square footage cost, does that include a percentage of what to allow for increase, percentage-wise? Or is that something separate you would have to show?
You're saying like...
I can show, yes, just say like April versus, or November versus April. We can, when we come back, we can give you that, we can give you that delta to show what that is.
Okay.
Great suggestion. Did you join back up again, or are you your table of one?
I was over there.
All right.
I was talking with that Brad.
Do you have a different opinion than Brad?
I kind of like what Brad's.
Okay, good. Any other thoughts from this table? Any changes in your initial strategy?
Did you throw out a number? What's a ballpark square foot number? No gym, just classroom.
So Clint just did some quick math on this 3-story plus the tech ed. So it's kind of the L-shaped piece of the little corridor linking back. That's about 78,000 square feet. Is that right?
Yeah, it's 48,425 for this building, 93,50 for the tech.
Let me take that back. 57,000. I was doing some other goofy math. So 57,000 is roughly the square footage of this 3-story plus the L-shaped tech ed.
So if you take the 48,425 to 50,000 square feet for a number, because we know it's going to be more efficient on 2 stories, and we know we need to increase the special ed.
And the tech ed.
And the tech ed's the 9350, so you double that to 20,000. You're going to need 70,000 square feet.
We just, while you guys were meeting, we said 70 to 80, just to make up a number for now. Yep.
And what's a square foot number?
We got to do a lot of work on that one, because we've got to do demo, we then have to figure out...
We got a demo number in here. Your demo number is what for the...
I think it's risky to try to come up with a price on that tonight.
Plus we have to figure out what exactly we have to do with the site.
We have a ton of site development, we've got to determine where it goes, where we remove building, we've got to re-enclose any existing ends of the building that are left as exposed. So it feels, a gut check would say it's absolutely in that range. It feels like a very viable potential solution. I just don't want to throw a number. I don't think it would do the group a lot of good to not have a little more work done on that one.
I think everyone, if we got 70,000 square feet, you knock down the 2 oldest sections of the school based on what we've seen, I think we'd be pretty happy walking away, personally.
Okay. Others have any thoughts? Okay. How are we doing?
Basically, we agree with where you're at.
Okay.
Something in 25 range.
Okay. 24.9?
24.9.
How about this group?
Who do you work with for staff when you're coming up with these conceptual designs, or is that just done down at the Bray office and you bring it up here?
This one was because it happened on Thursday and Friday, but usually we're reviewing them with Kyle, principals at times. I think we had food service director, athletics, PE previously.
You know, if you come back with anything in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think a couple people from this group should be involved in drawing that out. Because I think many of us in the room have a good sense of what's needed here. I'm not saying you guys don't, but
I'll take any help I can get on something like this, yeah.
well,
yeah.
I'm just saying. I mean, if you're gonna take one crack at this, you know, I'm sure Brad would volunteer.
I will be honest with you. This could easily go to referendum with and quite frankly, most projects go to referendum with basically a rectangle that says addition here, renovation there. Here's roughly what the program is going to be. Because communities aren't wisely investing hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in designing and engineering every piece of it until they know the community's on board.
Sure.
So as we've talked a lot, everything we've shown, there's very little chance that it would ever be built exactly like that post-referendum, because there's tons and tons of work and 10,000 decisions that would have to be made. So even if we don't like a solution the way it looks on paper, but we like it conceptually, that's what matters. And that's what we have to take to the community. On the bigger picture, any other thoughts? So did we have any thoughts beyond? I think the 2 options we have left are what's the minimum 612 new we could do as a first phase? And what is a 70 to 80,000 square foot addition that replaces our 1920s and our tech ed look like?
No gym.
With no gym? What do people think? Is there a third option they want to see in there? I'll be right.
I think the number one option needs to be the tech addition, whatever you're doing there first.
Okay?
One thing I think and Kyle mentioned the 9 to 12 option, and I know I respect Tim's comments a lot there, but as a superintendent who knows his staff, and I know he's put some thought into this with some different options, I would ask if you guys thought about a 9 to 12 option, because what he was saying, his comment about they minimize impact to kids, and then it kind of goes to, because some of the needs, the tech ed is really an important need. One other thing that resonated a little bit, I thought, was, where do you start in elementary or high school or somewhere else, or just on what this option is going to is. A lot of it was teeing up the kids of this community to go and make an impact in the county or in the world, wherever they end up. So that was why maybe I think the 9 to 12 high school option to compete with these other two was thrown out there, but I don't know what you guys think. What you guys think about it.
Okay. It's not a huge effort to program it both ways and put a quick cost on it. I think we can do that if the group would like. And the other thing I think we heard was looking at what is the impact of waiting from November to April on those options. Is that the other piece that we can bring back? Okay.
When you talk about waiting November to April, you're talking about cost. We also got to think about momentum, because we've been hitting the community pretty hard. It's on their radar. If we don't go in November, do we lose momentum, or do we get it going back in January, February, March for that April run? I don't know.
There was a lot of caution in the room tonight, and we respect that. You're taking this really seriously and not wanting to move too fast and do something that's not right, but Mr. Lukey's right. There's a lot of momentum in the community and excitement to do something, and we don't want to lose that. If we can find something that's suitable to go with earlier, we can capitalize on that.
That's why I'm encouraged when we say we want to come back in 2 weeks, then we'll have a better idea, because you guys got this tonight yet.
You had to absorb it pretty fast.
So the other thing is the survey results will be, I think we probably can email them to all committee members, right? And then we'll also be posting them on the website. I think that's typically how we would handle it. It's good information. I think people should see it and be able to study it in real color. Those were actually colored. We have to work on that projector before that. So anything else for the group? Otherwise, we'll have to try to find a date. That'll be our next fun task. All right, let's look. 2 weeks from tonight is the 24th.
Okay, we were on Mondays during the school year, but on Tuesdays, since those are nights school perceptions could make it. Do we want to go back to our Mondays, or I don't know what people's availability changes in the summertime or whatnot, but.
Tim, is Jackson Board of Health meeting on 24th?
So is Sevastopol.
So when the 23rd be better.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're on Monday. You're on Monday with Monday, the 20.
Yeah, they're in Monday.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We're next Monday, so this month we're okay. Aren't you clear?
Wednesday the 25th, I don't know, we haven't done them, we shouldn't have any sports or other.
Athletic field meeting 6 o'clock.
Okay.
24th at 6?
Hang on. So we're looking at the week of the 23rd. 23rd is a Monday, 24th is a Tuesday, Wednesday is the 25th.
I'm personally out that whole week, so that's the right week to do this, so.
So Town of Sevastopol meets on the 16th.
No, we're meeting on the
23rd.
Okay.
23rd is 24th is Jackson Court, and the 16th is.
We're clear that week. We're next week, so.
Is the 25th, the Wednesday the 25th acceptable for people?
There's an athletic code meeting at 6 on the 25th. So if people have kids, they won't be here.
How many would do athletic code that night?
As long as Kyle lets.
How long is it? An hour?
So we get
Not
there.
even?
I can send the whites.
No, I mean, we could always start.
We're gonna have to skip a break today.
I mean, whatever you guys want.
I'm sensing 25th, that we just have one conflict. How many people could do the 25th?
We got bridge set back yet? No, that's not good for us.
We'll start the game later that night.
Do you want to start it earlier, like at 5 or something, or to get?
People work till 5, so.
So are we saying the 25th at 6 o'clock? Well, comfortable with that? This room, or is this the room the athletic code meeting's in?
We'll have to change bridge.
We'll have to do it in the cafeteria.
Could we meet in the library where it's air conditioned?
Yes.
We could have moved this meeting, they're.
They wanted to have more room.
All right, on the 25th, 6 o'clock in the IMC. So American Action, 6 o'clock on the 25th.
All right. Thank you, group. Good work.
Thank you.
You guys have a good day.
We're going to take a recess.
Thank you, CFAC members, for attending tonight. We'll see you on the 25th. And the board will have a motion to go into recess for 10 minutes. 59, and move on to the next agenda item, which is review the 2018-19 preliminary budget information that Mr. Lukey just passed out.
You have the revenue limit worksheet in front of you. The yellow boxes are provided by DPI data, so that's nothing we can control. The green is then automatically calculated, and the pink are the ones we have to fill in. On the front page, the upper right-hand box is last year's numbers, and that gives you your base revenue built for 17-18 of $6,077,807. Then we have the September and summer FTE full-time equivalency membership averages. For 15, 16, and 17, our 3-year average was 570 students. The next 3 sets of numbers, 2016, 2017, 2018, are our September counts. We obviously don't know our September of 18 count yet. I believe that our summer school, we had 125 students attend the first day, so our FTE for summertime, I think will go up at least 1 student, and our overall population will be the same as the last count based on the graduating class and the ones we have coming in. You got to remember, 4K students are only worth 0.6 of a student compared to a kindergarten through 12th grader. With that, our 3-year rolling average would be 566 because the 2015 number of 577 is the largest of those years. So that's a decrease of 4. Then comes the declining enrollment. Our per member revenue is $10,662.82. We would have 4 of those students for the declining enrollment. What declining enrollment does, it allows you to gently drop down, and it'd be $42,651. For the tax equalization value, I just punched in the same value as last year. We'll find out the actual from the Department of Revenue on October 1st. So that leads us to the second page. Up in the upper right, we have the the base revenue of $6,077,807. Membership was 570, so that is a $10,662.82 per student amount. Current membership is 566, so it's so that's the calculation of $6,077,807. That you'll see on the left side, 7A and 7B. What they do is the hold harmless is the 42,670,651, so that's added on there because they're saying you're going to lose, but they let you down gently then. You drop down. Line 9 is $1,524,200. That takes in consideration the 3 numbers on line 10, A, B, and C. The 1.5 non-recurring operating cost referendum for $1.5 million, the 42,651 for the declining enrollment, and then the energy efficient is a negative because of 18,451 because they say you're going to save on that energy project, which is line 14B below, that's outside the referendum, the debt, the 38 when we did the energy efficiency project for 131,945. The state on line 12A left the general aid at 22,914. That'll be adjusted as well when we know our state aid amount. You subtract that plus the state aid for exemption for computers, which is now going to go up incrementally each year by $250, $2,207. They used to figure out how much computer property you had within your district and estimate it, and then give you a dollar value. Now they just said whatever you got 2 years ago, they're just going to keep adding increments onto it. So our allowable limit revenue is $7,576,886. That's broken up with the Fund 38 energy efficiency debt, broken up in lines 14A and B. We have $20,000 for the Fund 80, which is on line 15D. So the total amount of revenue from taxes, of property taxes, is $7,596,886. Projected mill rate would be $5.47, but we don't know that for sure at this point. The next page shows the Fund 10, 3841. We have no chargebacks. Fund 80 is 20,000, and this shows in the middle that we've levied to the maximum. Down below it says the total non-recurring exemptions is $1,566,851. That's a sum of the $1.5 million non-recurring referendum, which will be the last year will be on the books, the declining enrollment of $42,651, and the energy efficiency of negative $18,451. Right now, our preliminary budget for funds 10, 27, and 50, and remember 27 and 50 have to come back in the black or at zero. For teaching, salary, staff, and benefits, $4,369,751. Support and administrative staff, basically your non-teaching staff, salary and benefits, $2,897,144. And then supplies and services, $3,315,054 for a total of $10,581,949. And Carl Volkman worked really good hard on those on the last page. It looks like 3 numbers, but there's a lot of data that goes into those 3 numbers.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Lutke?
Is there a delta here about what we're allowed to ask for and budget here? So I may not understand. So the total of 7,596, 7 million and change versus the 10 million and change?
Right, because we also have our federal grants, our state grants, sparsity aid, transportation aid, those will come in as well.
So what we see right now is we don't see a red operating budget right now? Red like
I can't tell you if they're going to be the red like this last year was or not at this point because I don't know those numbers at this point. But I can tell you this is the estimated what we'll get from local property tax, right? I know what you're saying. You're saying, okay, I see 7.5 million and 10 million.
Well, I'm just throwing out there, if there's a point where you might need help from the board for priorities on where to cut back, whenever that time comes, make sure you give us time to chew on it and help you out.
Okay.
If you don't need our help, then let us know.
I think we're okay at this point, right.
Okay, if there's nothing else on that, we'll move on to summer ordering and projects.
There was no document given to you last year either, but Jean says we always approve whatever that's already been handed in and approved by administration because she doesn't make the purchases or the orders until it's been board approved.
Is there a motion to approve the summer ordering and projects? Those are things that they need at the start of the school year.
I would move to approve the summer ordering and projects.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion on that topic? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We do have our regular school board meeting next Thursday. If you have a report for your committee, get it into Jean because she'll be getting that packet out. And then there'll be that CFAC meeting on the 25th. If there's nothing else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:07 p.m.